Yes, Lord, we believe it. Help us to fulfill your purpose in the earth.
Alright, so I just put the last 3 lessons all together because I think I'm going to be taking all that we've done and preaching on it on the 11th, which is in 3 weeks. So we'll see how far. These 2, we're definitely going to get to, maybe. And then there's enough of this for 2 lessons. So we'll just see how far we get. Alright, there is no indication that the Antichrist is going to be a Nephilim or an Elohim. So probably not one of the sons of God. Probably not even a half and half. Probably just going to be a person.
Yeah.
However, the idea of an Antichrist does have links back to the Watchers before Jesus even showed up. Before even the Second Temple period, there was links between an anti-Messiah that was linked back to the Watchers. Already in Ezekiel 38 and 39, you got Gog and Magog. It shows a powerful ruler coming against Israel. And a lot of our prophecy today thinks it's Russia because a guy named Magog settled in Russia. That's where the Russian nation comes from. And not just Russia, but like Stans and Ukraine, Slav, all that's Magog. This Magog may not be that guy, though. It may just be somebody with a different name. And then, of course, Daniel's prophecies show the little horn with the big mouth. Oh, I guess that's a big horn with a big mouth, but still. So, to the Second Temple Jew, the Antichrist would be another Antiochus Epiphanes. We talked about him. He's the one that sacrificed a pig on the altar and set up one of the Greek gods in the temple and stopped them from worshiping. And if you were male and circumcised, then they would kill you and take your kids and send them to Greek schools and just all kinds of terrible things. So he set himself up as a god against God. Now Gog is often associated with Belial, who's the prince of darkness. Sometimes he's associated with Shemyaza, who was the leader of the Watchers when they came down to Hermon. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. There was a guy named Charles Watson, I want to say was his last name. And when the British, had their empire in the 1800s and they were doing all these different expeditions to different places, he went up to the top of Mount Hermon and found a tablet that was to those who took the oath, which is what Mount Hermon means, is place of the oath. And Enoch tells us that that's where the Watchers came down and swore an oath to each other to do all that stuff. So he found a tablet that was up there that the Greeks, I guess, a few 100,000 years before had left. And that tablet is in the British Museum. So we've known about this place for a very long time. Azazel is also another being that Gog is associated with. He was the first one that came to earth. Azazel kind of came to earth and took a wife and minded his own business. He didn't do a whole lot of corruption. But because he did that, the others thought they could do that too. And they came down and they did do corruption. So Azazel was kind of the mentor of the Watchers. He was a Watcher himself, but he's the one that the scapegoat is sent out into the wilderness to. And when they got to Jerusalem, they would take the goat to the same spot over and over. There's this cliff. It's going to go to this cliff every time. And at the bottom of the cliff was a bunch of boulders, and these boulders covered up a pit. And they didn't know where the bottom of that pit was. They never could find it. But they believed that Azazel was chained up in that pit. The others were in Tartarus, but Azazel was outside of Tartarus and down in the bottom of that pit. I don't know if they could take you to it today.
Now, that's where the Lord chained him up?
Mm-hmm. Well, Michael.
Gabriel. Yeah.
He was at Michael. Gabriel.
Michael.
Yeah.
Michael's a warrior.
So, according to Enoch and the other ancient texts, 1/10 of the Nephilim were allowed to wander the earth. 9/10 were sent to the abyss.
So we got about as many on earth as they have in the abyss, right?
We have 1/10.
1/10, and they have 9.
They got 9/10. Now, remember, it's from the abyss that John sees them loosed in Revelation 9. So as bad as it is now, or as many of the demons as out there now, it's only 1/10. It's only 10% of what it could be. One of the Dead Sea Scrolls identifies a son of Belial as an evil individual who has close connection with Satan. Sounds like the Antichrist to me. 300 years before Christ came on the scene, it already identified an Antichrist. Second Temple Jews believe that the demons, the unclean and evil spirits of dead Nephilim, were part of the end times army against Messiah.
Now.
They believe that the demons and the spirits of the Nephilim were part of the end time army against Messiah. So not just a bunch of people would be against Messiah, but a bunch of evil spiritual beings would be in an army against Messiah. They would be led by a supernatural figure, either Belial, which is another name for Satan, or possibly Shemyaza, again, that leader of the Watchers. And that this army would fight alongside the human armies fighting against Israel.
So they'll look human?
Or they would be fighting in spiritual places at the same time, on the spiritual realm.
So they might not be seen.
So we might not see them.
Oh.
Well, I mean, if we're riding on the white horse with Jesus, we'll see him all right. But people there might not see him. So you got the spiritual army that would be led by Satan or maybe Shemyaza, and then a human army that would be led by an evil tyrant. That would be the Antichrist. Now, a lot of times when we read Revelation, it talks about Babylon. Babylon this, Babylon that. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon is often thought of as that evil in Revelation. But the truth is a whole lot worse. We've talked about that some, because Babylon is the name of multiple cities. Babylon means gateway of the gods, or gate of the gods. Just like we got Athens, Georgia, and there's Athens, Tennessee, and Athens, Mississippi, and there's Athens, Greece. There's a bunch of Babylons. And they existed at different times. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon existed kind of around David's time, David all the way through the kingdom of Israel. But there was another Babylon that existed even before Israel came about. It was a place where a man apparently became a Nephilim through witchcraft and spells. And mankind did something so evil that God tore them apart. And that Babel would be Nimrod's Babel. Because it's the same word in Greek. Babel, Babylon, it's the same word in Revelation, in the original text. So every time that you see Babylon in Revelation, think Nimrod's Babel, not Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. And Nimrod was inhabited by or turned into a Nephilim. Somehow that happened. And he became a tyrant that took over the whole world from Noah. He attacked Noah, attacked his cousins as they're rebuilding the earth. And became a world tyrant. In fact, that's how China got started. Was the Chinese, the family that would become the Chinese, fled. It's in some of their ancient texts that they fled from the West from a tyrant that was taking over everything.
So now they're trying to take over everything.
Yeah.
Same spirit.
Everybody does it, yeah. And it was only because Abraham that broke the power of Nimrod at Babel. And, well, God dividing everything up.
So when they
Dividing
was
languages.
building that, to go up to the sky, you talking about that same time?
Mhm.
When he come in and had them speak different languages?
That destroyed Nimrod's Babel, that empire.
And it was, and the purpose of that was,
Remember, we learned the purpose of that was to try, one, to try to get above the floodwaters that God had sent. Two, to try it, because remember, he built it over top of where they thought the abyss was. So they were trying to get the watchers, get the gods, back out of the abyss. Because God had chained them up, chained the gods up, and then sent the flood to wipe them out. So they built this tower right over top of it to try to get them out. It's not just that God had said, go separate everywhere, and they said, nah, we're going to build a tower.
it was much bigger
It
than
was a
what
whole
we
lot
know.
worse than that. A whole lot darker. Much, vastly more sinister. Well, that happens again at the end of the age. Rebuilding Babel. Alright, then you got Revelation 9, where it talks about a star that falls from heaven. He's given a key, he opens the abyss. Revelation 9. The fifth angel sounded his shofar, and I saw a star that had fallen out of heaven onto earth. And he was given the key to the shaft leading down to the abyss. He opened the shaft of the abyss, and there went up smoke from the shaft like the smoke of a huge furnace. The sun was darkened, and the sky too, by the smoke from the shaft. Then out of the smoke onto the earth came locusts, and they were given power like the power scorpions have on the earth. They were instructed not to harm the grass on the earth, any green plant or any tree, but only the people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. The locusts were not allowed to kill them, only to inflict pain on them for 5 months. And the pain they caused was like the pain of a scorpion's sting. In those days people will seek death, but they will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. Now these locusts looked like horses outfitted for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold, and their faces were like human faces. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like those of lions. Their chests were like iron breastplates, and the sound of their wings was like the roar of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails like those of scorpions with stings, and in their tails was the power to hurt people for 5 months. They had a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Destroyer. The first woe was past, there's 2 more to come. Oh, and in the very next trumpet, they released the 4 Elohim that are bound at the great river Euphrates to kill 1/3 of mankind.
This spirit demon that's going to be released. When you read that it had, it would sting them, and it evidently, when it stings them, and of course it didn't kill them, but it, from what I understand, and I may be wrong, that it affected them for 5 months, that one sting.
They would long for death for 5 months, and it would not come. They're in the middle of all that dying. For 5 months, all of a sudden, nobody dies. They long for death, but it won't come.
Oh my goodness.
So the fate of the Watchers, or those Elohim, is to be imprisoned in Tartarus, or the abyss, until the day of their judgment. It said in Enoch. And then we just saw in Revelation, where the demons are released, that other 90%, and the Watchers out of the river Euphrates, and the abyss. So for 5 months, God lets them out. Of course, now remember, there are Watchers that are still, these are the Watchers from Enoch's time. There are Watchers from after Babel that are here on earth already. They're the ones that we struggle against.
Because they wouldn't destroy them.
Because they weren't chained up. Because it's the job of the church to dispossess them of their nations.
because of Jesus Christ. When
Mm-hmm.
when He come in, He gives us the authority,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do nothing.
So there's watchers from Elohim, the gods, the sons of God, from before Noah, before the flood. They're the ones chained up in the abyss, except for 4 under the Euphrates and Azazel. And then there's the same kind of being that's the principalities and the powers and rulers of this dark age, the gods of the nations that came after Babylon. Their job was supposed to be to direct the nations to God. They didn't do that, took the worship for themselves and didn't judge right. So in this time, we're going to have all of those roaming the earth.
Now we won't be here. We'll come back with the Lord and judge it. We'll come back with the Lord and fight Him, fight the good.
So 144,000, it talks about in Revelation 14, 1 through 5. They are in the heavenly Zion, in the throne room. It says explicitly they are male virgins, which is kind of odd because Israelite priests could be married. All right, Lord, so that's different. What's going on? They align as a positive to the Levitical priests and are the reversal of the defilement of the fallen watchers. You guys were supposed to be up here ruling the nations, close to God, but you fell. So instead, I'm going to replace you with people who hadn't fallen, who are humans and come from Israel.
I wonder why they were male virgins. Is it because of the priest that
it's almost spitting in the watcher's face. You guys fell. You guys went to earth to go take females, lust after females, go take them as your own. These folks, they're lowly humans, and that didn't cause them to fall. You guys got tripped up by it. These lowly humans didn't. So I'm putting them in the council.
I wonder. I just wonder. With all the perversion that's going on sexually now, I'm wondering if some of these spirits have been let loose they know that these priests, do they know that this is going to happen?
They can read, yeah. So the 144,000 are an anti-image to the watchers. You guys were around the throne, but you lusted after these women. You went down to earth. You left heaven. You left where you were supposed to be and went to earth to do all that. Well, these folks are on the earth, and they didn't do what you do, so I'm taking them from the earth and pulling them up to heaven in your spot.
Well, and see, I was always under the impression that in Israel that there was only going to be 144,000 that were saved. So it's...
Yeah. No, there's going to be ladies saved in Israel too.
Well, and that was confusing the way that people talked about it. So now...
There's way more than 144,000 Messianic Jews today. And interestingly, when you read the list of the tribes they come from, there's no Ephraim and there's no Dan.
Wow. Well, wasn't the Antichrist supposed to be from Dan?
He's from the area of Dan. Yes. He's from Syria, but the part of Syria that the tribe of Dan used to live in. Because Dan forsook its allotted land. They had land down in the south, on the eastern side of the Jordan. They said, we want that land up there, which happened to be in Bashan. They took priests, Levites, who kept idols, and they became cult-centered, and they settled, not where they were supposed to, but they settled in Bashan at the foot of Hermon. Guys, That ain't the right place to settle. So of course, they were corrupted almost immediately by the Canaanite worship that was going on.
Yes.
Now, Gog of Magog, the end times enemy from the north, according to Ezekiel, may not be a nation. Rather, the translation could also be from the uttermost parts of the north. And remember when we talked about north, the Hebrew word for north is Zaphon. So the Gog of Magog comes from the uttermost parts of Zaphon, which would then make Gog, well, the Sumerian word for darkness is Gog. It would make Gog not an earthly prince, but rather a supernatural terror, or a personification of darkness, or the Lord of Zaphon, the north, aka Baal Zebul. Right, we talked about Beelzebub, Baal Zebul, Lord of the north, Satan. The end times enemy from the north, that would be Satan. Also, Armageddon may not be the valley of Megiddo. Rather, because in Hebrew the word is Harmageddon, Harmageddon. So it's Har Moed, which is Har is mountain, Moed is assembly, the Mount of Assembly. The battle at the Mount of Assembly. Well, the Mount of Assembly for Yahweh is Zion in Jerusalem. So the final battle, Armageddon, between Antichrist and Messiah takes place over Jerusalem at the end of the age. That is Mount Zion. In Daniel, when the Antichrist speaks, he sounds just like, you can almost align the Antichrist talking in Daniel 11 with where Satan is talking in Isaiah. I will set myself up above the stars of God. I would sound just like it. Alright, Typhon is part of a Greek legend. And in that Greek legend, he flees to, shocking, Zaphon. He doesn't find refuge there. He is flung into Tartarus, which is the abyss. Needless to say, by the shape of the person there and Typhon there, Typhon is associated with the giants. He is also associated with the Egyptian god Seth, especially because of all the horns he has. He has both human and animal features. Sounds a lot like Daniel's 11th horn there, the Antichrist. So for Second Temple Jews, the great end times enemy is both human and not human. It's a personification of evil and is associated with giants, which are the Nephilim, the sons of the Watchers. Matthew 25:41 tells us the lake of fire was prepared for the devil and his angels, his Elohim. Revelation 19, 20, and 21 all talk about the lake of fire. But, guess what? The lake of fire is not in the Old Testament. Can't point to the lake of fire anywhere in the Old Testament. So where do we get that idea and understanding, that theology from? Well, it is in Enoch. And Enoch aligns with Revelation. The Watchers are in the abyss. They're released for 5 months. And they're recaptured and thrown in the lake of fire. So God's plan is for His kingdom to overspread the entire globe and not be stopped. That's the Great Commission. Go into all the nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Make disciples. Teaching them to believe. That's the plan. It's the Great Commission. Get out there in the nations. Take them all back. However, the gods of the nations, obviously, will resist. They like being gods and kings. Yeah. God's judgment, his promise for them to die like men in Psalm 82 has not stopped their opposition. They didn't go, oh, I won't do anything then. Nope. Revelation 12:12 shows them being fooled at the cross. And by that, they understood that the timetable of their end was coming. It is a set number of days that we have left. So they're going to try to make the most of it. Try to stir up as much trouble, cause as much evil, take as many people with them, just to hurt God as they can. Mm-hmm. They know their end. They know there's only a few years left. They're going to do as much damage as they can.
Yeah, because we're God's creation.
Mm-hmm. So God's judgment against the gods is linked to the repossession of their nations. God is taking their nations back from them. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our God and of his Christ forever. Revelation. Well, guess who he decided to have take those nations back?
Yes.
The church. His council, the ecclesia. So God linked the dispossession of those Elohim to the participation of the Adam, or humans. Of course, the Watchers figured they could just drag this out because humans are malleable. They can drag out their control and stave off their judgment as long as possible. These people have short lives and even shorter memories. We can trick them and confuse them with all kinds of stuff. Blind them, close their eyes to us. They know about Satan, they don't know about the rest of us. And they don't really think of Satan as a person, they just think of him as some malicious force of evil. Not an individual being, much less us as individual beings. So war in the heavenlies is more than angels and demons. You've got angelos, or aglos, those are messengers. Now, in the Old Testament, they were thought of just as messengers. In the Greek, because there's not quite a word-for-word term, angel was changed to more of just a divine being on the good side. It's not exactly what it means. It still means messenger. Kind of a lowly rank of righteous divine being, righteous spiritual being. Hebrews 2:7 has humans a little lower than the angels. But Psalms has humans a little lower than the Elohim, which would be way above angels. The Elohim, the gods, the sons of God, the princes, that's the top. So he made humans just a little below that. Daimon is, it's pretty easy to find. That's demon. In Greek, demon or daimon could be good or bad. The New Testament uses them just for the sinister spiritual powers. And by the way, when they translated the Old Testament into Greek about 300 years before Jesus, that's what the Greek Old Testament, or the Septuagint, does. The word for sinister supernatural powers, they gave daimon. We use that word. So that's why we continue to use that word. Satan and the demons are mentioned together one time. That's Luke 11:18. That's the whole house divided against itself can't stand, but Satan and the demons don't do that. That verse implies that Satan has authority over the demons. Don't know how he took that, because he's not one of their parents. Some people say that Satan convinced Shemyaza and the other 200 watchers to fall. Just like he convinced Adam and Eve to fall, he convinced them to fall.
Well, that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. I don't know why not. And then he has, because they're chained up and other watchers are in place now as the gods of the nations, Satan has authority over the demons. Paul's use of daimonion in 1 Corinthians aligns with the quote in Deuteronomy 32, where the Greek uses daimonion, but the Hebrew word is shadim and Elohim. So basically what I'm saying is Paul calls demons what the Old Testament calls the demons. So the words are the same, except that a lot of times, because there's not a Greek word that fits it precisely, sometimes what the Hebrew calls Elohim, or the gods, they aren't called that in our New Testament in Greek. Sometimes in Paul's writing, the word theos, or God, has an overlap between God and the gods as well, kind of like Elohim, but I mean it's not quite as precise. So, just like you got the Prince of Persia, the Prince of Greece, and the Prince of Israel in Daniel 10, when Daniel was translated into Greek, those are the archons, Michael being one of the chief archons. That's the rulers. This is straight from Paul. The rulers, the principalities, the authorities, the powers, the dominions or lords, the thrones, the world rulers. And then there's the Greek word for each of those that Paul's actually using. These are used in the New Testament, and then when you look around in other Greek literature, you find them. And in the other Greek literature, it's plainly clear that these words are used to denote geographical dominion. Authority over a specific geographic region. Well, Paul's probably not just going, I don't think I'll think about them in that context. No, if Paul's using the words, he's thinking, just like everybody else, geographical domain. From the top down. Interesting also. Alright, so there's the list that Paul uses. So our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the arche, against the exousia, against the kostrokor of this darkness, against the pneumatikos of wickedness, the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Ding, ding, ding. Ephesians 1:10. God raised Jesus from the dead and seated him at his right hand in heavenly places, far above every
Yes.
principality,
Yes.
and authority, and power, and lord, far above all of these geographic rulers here.
Because he's the Son of God.
And it was only after Jesus arose that Yahweh's plan was made known to the principalities and the authorities in heaven. So even Michael and Gabriel didn't have any idea God was keeping that much of a secret. The arche and exousia are disarmed and put to shame by the cross, according to Colossians. Had the archons known that Jesus' death was needed, they would never have crucified him.
That's why it was kept a secret.
Right? So Paul clearly has divine counsel, geographic rule, understanding here.
Yes, he does. That's what I was thinking.
Word for word.
Yes. And that had to be revealed by the Holy Spirit for him to know that.
And read Enoch and Deuteronomy 32. In Psalm 82.
Oh, the
stuff that we've
the
read.
Old Testament.
Yeah.
Okay.
The stuff that we've been studying. Although yes, the Holy Spirit inspired him write all that down.
Yes.
So, there is the possibility of competing interests in the kingdom of darkness, even though there's the common goal of opposition to Yahweh and His council, of which we are a part. Right? Because just because the United States and United Kingdom agree most of the time, doesn't mean we don't sometimes maybe have competing interests here and there. We can be allies, but it don't mean that we're the same thing. Same thing in spiritual places. Just because they have a common goal of defeating Yahweh and maintaining their rule as long as they can, it doesn't mean there's not division there. Well, that sounds like a really good thing to exploit if you're thinking in terms of a military operation. Exploit those divisions. Turn them against each other.
What happens to the people how the spirit sends them demonic spirits that's controlling the world? What happens to people when they die? What happens to the spirits?
Well, those spirits tend to not possess folks, so they would be raising up somebody else to come in. I think we talked about it. I don't remember if, no, I guess we talked about it somebody else. That's one reason that graveyards can be, that a lot of demonic ceremonies happen in graveyards, is because these demons they want to possess a body, have a body again. Well, this person's body died, now what am I going to do? I'm just floating here, I'm stuck.
So they can come out and possess other people.
Until somebody else comes along and opens the door for me to get in.
You know, that's what you have at Savannah, you know, they call it the ghost, graveyard, you know, and they're always having ceremonies there for,
They'll take you a tour around.
well, they have ceremonies
Yes.
for the
Wiccans and pagans
witches and all
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Because those demons will be stuck in that body. Sorry. you were possessing that one until it died. Now they're
Adam,
waiting on a new host.
we had a preacher from Savannah that he lived in there at one time. It was Brother Holcomb, and he told us that the demon spirit was so bad in Savannah that you could just almost feel it. And I had never heard that before, but he had talked about and that's one reason he wanted to get out of Savannah. So I could see that now. If they're calling them up.
Yeah, the whatever throne is there, it's probably a throne, I don't know, it could be one of those, is there, it's probably pretty strong. Same as the one in New Orleans, where you can feel it there.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but I can feel it in Nashville.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. Oh, and the things that we saw in
I hate to
Nashville
say it,
can't even be talked about in a Sunday school room. We did too. Yes, we couldn't wait to get out of Nashville. Yes.
And that, you know, Seattle, Portland, places like that. Time
Now,
for church to,
is there like competitions with the demons to get more power?
Mhm.
Or are they?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know if we ever knock one of these guys off of their throne. I know that we eventually do. We replace them. Well, what if we could take out all of their demons?
And that's by praying.
By praying and repossessing every piece of land.
And worship, because that's what Satan wants. He wants our worship.
He wants still our worship.
He wants our
Mhm.
worship.
I mean, think about if America was full of demons before Christians came here, land on the East Coast, and the Christians start marching west, what's going to happen to the demons? They're all going to get bunched up and shoved over toward the west. Well, that's kind of exactly what you see. They got shoved as far as they could into the water.
And they hate water. You have
And
got
they
that
hate
in
water.
my
They go over
head.
that water. Makes sense. We took this piece of land back, now we took this piece of land back, now we took this piece of land back. That's what we still got to do. I'm gonna take this piece of land. I'm gonna take this piece of land. All right, we'll do one more and we'll stop. 2 Peter and Jude refer to the glorious ones. These are the divine beings of the council that's close to God's presence. 2 Peter says, the angels, even though they're above humans, would not dare rail against the glorious ones as humans do. Apparently they were not talking good stuff about them in Peter's time. But that, for us, suggests a distinction between glorious ones, the Elohim, and angels. Enoch describes Gabriel, for example, as an archangel or one of the glorious ones. So there's clearly, even in the New Testament, a distinction between angels and Elohim. There's a structure. And I could keep going, but I'll save some for next week. And we got about 9 minutes to pray in sanctuary.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.